Hey folks, Ariel and Clay over here. We are going to try to do a question and answer video together.
And before we go any further, as you can probably see, there is a focus issue here. I am not sure what happened. I'm still getting used to doing things with both of us on camera at the same time, because that's pretty new. But the camera just messed up here, and I did not realize till I was editing that we actually were out of focus here. It does come back into focus about 26 minutes in, but for the first 26 minutes, we are not in focus. That's not just your screen. I did not want to try to make Clay sit down and redo all this the first 26 minutes once I realized what had happened, and since we're just answering questions and you can hear our voices anyway, that's how it is. But I really apologize. It was very sad to me when I discovered the camera had not cooperated here for the start.
We had quite a few questions about construction and house building related stuff that we've collected over the last bunch of videos from all the places you can find our videos. So Odyssey, Rumble, YouTube, etc. You can find the whole channel on any of those. Anyway, some of these are duplicates. I'm sure I'll miss some somewhere in there, but we're going to try to get to a bunch of them. Somebody asked, does Clay have any previous building experience? He seems to know a lot of things. Do you have any previous building experience?
Oh yes, yes, I've been building most of my life, so yeah, I started off primarily in commercial construction and building schools and hospitals and water treatment plants and sewage treatment plants, and then later went into custom home building. So yeah, I've got a pretty extensive building background and machinery operations and things and such like that, just basically being in the trades. So yes.
Just a little. Like even in our area, you built multiple of the schools, water systems for some of the small towns,
Yep.
rest stops. If you've ever been to Wyoming, built various things up in the national parks. It's got some. We could go all day with just stories of past building stuff, and that would take the whole video. But yeah, I feel very fortunate. I do not have building experience. I've learned a lot of things helping you in the last few years, but.
Yeah, but the thing is, you never stop learning. I mean, there's new stuff. The techniques and products and everything change every year, and I haven't really kept up with them. And so I still build the old way in a lot of ways. I'm sure there's guys that would say, "Oh, you're doing it wrong," but what is wrong? If it works for you, it's right. So.
I often joke that we should make his shop at some point into like a tool museum, because you own the whole history of tools from, you've got like hand twist drill bits, what are those called? Up to corded drills, to cordless drills. I mean,
yeah,
you've got a lifetime
evolved,
yeah, you got all of it. Antique tools and modern ones.
Yeah, not that they do you much good nowadays, but I still use some of the old ones once in a while. They're kind of fun. So
anyway, so let's just go on with random questions. Somebody asked about, did we, these are collected over kind of all our construction videos here over the summer. Did you have to water the concrete frequently to keep the surface from drying out before the inside dried and set?
We did not water it at all. Actually, while it's taking a set, if you water it while you're trying to work the concrete, it'll actually speed it up. So there's kind of a fine line there. You really only have so much time with concrete. If it's a slab, you got to finish. But in our case, we had the worst conditions possible. It was super, super hot. Dry, and it had been for a long time. So the only thing we did to help mitigate some of that was to water the ground prior to pouring, which kept the concrete from having all the moisture drawn out into the ground. So no, there's really not a whole lot you can do. Occasionally, if you're finishing a slab, you can sprinkle a little water on the top to bring up a little cream to smooth it out, but otherwise, no.
We did run a sprinkler on those footers right after they were done for a bit
Well,
because it was so hot.
Yeah, I guess I didn't go there, but and we did it on the slab in here as well. But once it's poured and finished, so it doesn't set up so fast that it cracks, then keeping water on it to keep the concrete a little bit cooler makes a huge difference. So we actually had sprinklers on the slab inside here, and we did the same thing on the house foundation just so the footers didn't break apart or anything. We retarded the curing process by keeping water on it and keeping it cooler.
Somebody asked if you own that Bobcat you were using to move things around and dig dirt. I can answer that kind of like all the other tools. Clay's owned pretty much all the construction tools for a long, long time now.
Yeah. I mean, I've had them for a long time, and I take good care of them, and they're my babies. Any builder or craftsman or tradesman, really you're only as good as the tools you use, and taking care of your tools is going to make or break whatever you're doing. So.
And I can vouch for that. He means meticulously. Like on any of your machinery, you're like, it's been running for 7 hours and 50 minutes and it's supposed to be greased at 8 hours. I have to shut down right this second and grease everything. I mean,
and I will. But I've had to replace bearings and stuff and other old equipment, and that's because if you lapse on your greasing, it dries out the bushings, because it's just all a bunch of moving parts, and there's metal to metal bushings, and if you don't keep grease in there, they start wearing on that, and then before you know it, I'm sure everybody has seen construction equipment where everything's rattling and bouncing around and whatnot. That's because the bushings are shot. It'll still work for a long time, but you get a lot of slop, and so you can't have a whole lot of finesse when you're digging or grading or whatever when you've got movement in your bushings. So hope that clears it up.
We got some of these questions are kind of duplicates. We got several questions about, did you check for gold in the stones? Because that sure looked like really round river rock where we, dug out the house foundation.
So it's kind of funny because I am very, very much into gold, and I've got quite an extensive amount of history with it, and I love playing in gold and prospecting for gold and whatnot. But in this case, and Ariel asked me if I was going to check it, and I figured if I found some, I would get bogged down because it's kind of an addiction. But no, I did not check it. Probably should have, but I did not check it to see if there was any gold in there.
Well, but you're also basing that on you have prospected around this part of Wyoming a lot.
Yeah.
And yes, it is round river rock that has clearly run through water in the past that's under our place here, but it also goes down, we know from, checking like government geological drill tests, that stuff goes down like 300-400 feet. And since gold usually sinks to the bottom of anything like that, if there is, it's probably 300-400 feet down, not 6.5 feet.
Except that there's like a false bedrock at the rock layer. It is like caliche, and I probably should have checked, but I didn't.
When you're not building, we're going to go prospecting around some streams. There are spots in this area that are known to have gold. I mean, teeny little flakes, not like don't come rushing to Wyoming because you're going to become, a billionaire or anything. You can spend all your free time and maybe collect a few ounces after a lifetime, but it is something you really like. But it's glacier gold, and it's ground so fine that it's like the finest flour you can have. It takes a lot of little specks to be able to see it, but if you have enough of it, you can actually see it in your pan. But
it's a very, very, very fine ground gold from the glaciers moving through this valley.
But where I was going is there are places that are known to have some of that, and there are places nearby that just have none. No one's ever found any. And as far as I know, our property is sitting on one of the nuns.
Yeah. But I haven't checked either. Maybe we'll do a...
We've still got piles of fill that didn't go back in out there, so when you have time, maybe you'll go pan it. Somebody asked if we're going to compact that dirt floor on our cellar. Is our dirt compactable?
Not really beyond what it already is, and it's... we watered it down, but it's like 95% gravel, and you're limited on how much you can get compaction when you have just rock. It's comprised of boulders and sand, and then we topped it with a fine gravel on the top. But no, there was no need of compaction, and like with the footers, when I put those in, I did it myself, so I made sure I never had any overdig. I dug down close to the grade within, an inch or less, and then I hand shoveled that, so the whole entire foundation is setting on undisturbed soil, so it's nature's compaction. And on the inside where the slab is, or, through the center of the house, all of that I left higher. I don't know if you noticed that in the video. So there was only a little bit right at the footer that I dumped in, around the edges of the footer, and then just a skim over the top just to make it flat because of the rocks. But no, there was no need of compaction.
In fact, when you were digging it, it's very difficult, even using machinery, to pry the rocks apart because there's almost nowhere to get the teeth in between it to even start. Even though they're rounded, they're all up against each other, so tight.
Yeah.
Let's see. Like I said, some of these are duplicates. Here's another construction question. I am skipping some other comment questions because otherwise this video is going to get too crazy long. Somebody wondered if, so it's like 40 degrees outside right now, which is why we finally have time to sit here and do this. The whole last week we were going like mad trying to finish up. We each had our own list, and there was some overlap of the stuff that must happen before it turns into winter. And we did get snow the last 2 days. It's already pretty much melted. We got very little in our yard, but we finally got water. It rained some, and then slushy snowed, which was wonderful. But we were pushing really hard to get a bunch of stuff done. So now it's kind of soggy outside, which is lovely instead of dusty, and it's cold, and so we have time to sit here and do this. But somebody wondered if our house foundation is okay now that it is snowing.
For sure, it's completely protected. From the surface, when you look at it, from our perspective right now, if we look out and look at the foundation, it's completely covered. There's nothing exposed. So it's covered with a tarp. Down below, we've got thermometers down there and humidistats down there, and we are monitoring it to see if the humidity gets too high or whatever. But right now, even when it was in the teens, it hasn't got below 53 degrees down below, so I'm not worried about frost heaving the footers or anything like that. But we'll continue to monitor it, and if it starts to cool off too much in there, then we'll close down. There's 6 vents in there currently, and it's more than enough right now. We went from 100% humidity down to, what are we at, 53?
And there's a video I don't have done yet on finishing up some of that floor stuff for the winter that I've got filmed, but you guys will probably be seeing this before you see that. So you'll see some of those.
But anyway,
details.
No, not worried about it at all. But again, we'll monitor it, and if there's a problem arises, we'll deal with it this winter.
Somebody got several related questions about drainage around the outside of the foundation. So if people watched all the videos, they saw us do the waterproofing and stuff and you backfilling. Are you concerned at all about drainage around the exterior of that cellar?
Well, in most situations, or a lion's share of them, where you have silty loam soils and whatnot, where it'll hold water. In our case here, where it's almost, like I said before, 95% rock with a little bit of sand and no dirt mixed in with it. So literally, if you dump water or even a garden hose in one spot, it just disappears. So it's dropping all the way through and going into the gravel. It's all gravel around it. So,
well, in fact, it drains so well, the main river that runs through our valley toward our end of the valley goes underground for most of the summer. And it comes up downstream a ways, but the entire main river goes underground because it rains.
Currently right now, the river itself is underground. You know, the ditch is there, the cavern where the river should be, but it runs underground for probably about 8 or 10 miles, and then it pops back up because the way the valley floor is laid out, it goes along through the gravel, through the valley, and then when you get down to the narrows, the bedrock comes up, which brings the water up, and then it resurfaces, and then from there on, it's open water.
I feel like that's just a good illustration of how well this soil drains.
Yeah.
It can dump an entire river underground for months in the summer.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we're not too concerned about not having
No, and we
drainage.
protected the foundation itself with, a water barrier, and then we've got a filter fabric up against the water barrier, so it creates a place for it to, if a lot of water got there, it would hit that, run down, go over the footer, and down into the ground. We actually ran that waterproofing down the wall, over the footer, and then back down like that, and so there's no chance of it getting into the house. At least that's the plan.
We got several questions about, does this mean we're selling the tiny house, or what are we doing with the tiny house, etc. No, I have no plans to get rid of it. It's currently this summer become our guest house for had various family members and a few friends. We were mostly too busy this summer, and apparently everyone else was too, because not that many guests came to visit, but we are hoping that in the future we will have a lot more of those. We've had more other years, and we will have a little more free time. And anyway, it's kind of nice to have a guest house, and we did have friends and family stay in it this summer as well.
But it's also served as a garden shack too, because the main garden is right next to the tiny house, and so it's served as a garden shed as well. So.
Like right now, if we had a friend coming over, I'd have to move all my gardening tools that are pitched right inside the door as I wrap up things in the garden to give room for them. We got lots and lots of comments on how many rocks we've got pulled out of that pile for sure. Most of those are not questions. They're just comments about that. We do indeed have a lot of rocks. Someone had a question, will we be able to access the root cellar or cold storage room from inside the house? They said perhaps they missed this, which I think they did if they'd watched every single video, but will we be able to?
Yes. There'll be a stairway right when you come in the main entryway, just off to your right. There'll be a door there, of course, but there'll be a stairway down into the root cellar.
Not really a construction question, but somebody else wondered, are the mountains here, I think based on the amount of rock we pulled out of the ground, are these part of the Canadian Rockies? Well, we're not in Canada, so not really the Canadian Rockies, but the mountain range that runs through this part of Wyoming is part of the whole greater Rocky Mountain range that goes through most of the lower 48 across Canada and up into Alaska. So yes, we are in the Rocky Mountains.
And they are rocky, like solid rock.
Somebody had a question about your rock picker rake. Where do they buy a rock picker rake?
Ooh, I don't know. I've never seen one of those.
It's a manure fork. That one.
Well, it was a heavy duty manure fork. The new ones they make today are really light duty. That one originally was a manure fork, but it's ancient. I've welded it, and you know, I got it given to me by an old guy years ago, and you know, I just kept welding it and patching it and changing the handle. But that is the handiest tool I've ever had. But I don't think you can buy it. I've never seen it
A
anywhere.
solid steel one.
No.
But what it is, it's made for scooping horse poop out of
Yeah.
a stable. It's
Yeah.
just, most of them are plastic now, and it's a really stout old one.
And those work great until the first time you hit a rock and it busts off a tine, and then it becomes useless. So,
But if you can find at some thrift store, garage sale or something, an old steel manure fork, it's good for picking little rocks. That's what he was
Yep.
using.
yeah.
Somebody had a question about they didn't see the chickens and ducks milling around a whole bunch. Are they cooped up to keep them out of the way? Yes, they were. The ducks were out all summer because they pretty much stay in the creek or the ditch. They like the water. They wobble across the middle of the yard at times, but they pretty well stay out of the way. The chickens, we did fence a big chunk kind of temporarily behind the buildings to keep them there because of two reasons. For one, they, especially your girlfriend Blondie, likes to get in the way. We didn't want to run over and squish chickens with the heavy machinery moving things around or dump rocks on top of them. And with the styrofoam block walls, as we were building those, and then they were exposed until we got them fully backfilled. One thing I did not know before we kept chickens is chickens love to eat styrofoam. They're crazy little birds. We first learned this when we had a pilot installation. They'll eat styrofoam and fiberglass. And I'm not sure how it didn't kill them. But they won't just like peck at it out of curiosity. They will eat holes clean through it. And so, because we couldn't very well have the chicken flock eat our house walls before we got them buried underground where they can't get to them, they were contained for, I mean, it was still a huge yard, but we did put some fencing up between some of the buildings, so they had to stay kind of behind the barns and the shops and such, and could not get onto our construction site and either get in the way, get squished, or eat the house. So they're back, now that that's all buried, they're back to running around the whole yard, but that is why you didn't see chickens milling about in a lot of the construction videos.
But in addition to that, we had to put a fence up around the foundation because the chickens, if they got up on the tarp, you know, their little claws are razor sharp, they would shred the tarp in no time, and then it would be leaking in the house. So we now have a secondary fence around the house, and they get to run everywhere else.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a deer fence, and that'll be in one of the videos putting that up, but not just the chickens, because the dogs run around. As soon as the snowpack is up, they would end up running across it all because it should be leveled off, and we didn't want dog toenails either to tear the tarp open and make it leak. So now the house is fenced off from the critters for the winter.
Yes.
Are we going to start framing now or wait until spring?
We most definitely are not going to start framing now because we've actually gone too far in. I mean, we could, but we've got so many things to get done up. You know, when you're doing it by yourself and you're not hiring contractors, yes, there would have been plenty of time to have got it framed up, but in our situation where we have so many other, you know, just chores that we have to get done prior to the snow coming, if we don't do those, then we will be in a bad way once the snow sets in permanently. We won't have anything done. So we both sat down and said, well, we could keep going, or we shut it down for the winter and take care of all our other duties that we have to do to live the way that we do. And so that's what we chose, and we're gonna ride out the winter, and hopefully if the weather's good in the spring, we'll finish it up in the spring. So that's the plan.
It was tempting because our fall has gone on longer than normal here. A few times have been like, well, should we have tried to start framing? But totally aside from building a house, Clay has a full sheet list of, you know, paper of projects. He labeled his 10 years of stuff to do this year. I have my own full sheet list of projects that I said to do before winter that are, you know, just all the, like, get the potatoes out of the ground and the garden, all, you know, this kind of stuff, things that have to be cleaned up, tidied, put away. Some of it's just this time of year, some of it's that some things got a bit neglected all summer because you were dedicating all your time to building. So while we probably could have, given that the fall weather went on longer than normal and it, you know, is not fully under snow out there, could have probably slammed up some framing, but I'm not even sure we would have got that done and dried in, and then none of the other stuff would have been ready for winter.
Yeah, we could end, and it may turn out that we've had years where it goes all through the entire month of November, and we could have done it, but we made a call and we're going to stick to it, and so the answer is no.
We got a few roof questions. Somebody was hoping we're under roof before snow falls. We kind of just addressed that. It's under tarp. The roof of the cellar, which is the floor of the house, is sealed up, but we're definitely not going to have the walls and roof up. Somebody's asking out what pitch we're planning to have on the roof.
It'll be a 412 pitch, which is, you know, right at the bottom end of a roof sliding, but if you maintain it, the roof will still slide. We're going to have a metal roof, so 412 pitch is adequate. We didn't want to have something that was, you know, annoying to get up and down on, or, you know, whatever, you know, always thinking of longevity, you know, and Ariel likes the look of a little lower profile, and so do I, so.
But also in our climate, you certainly don't want anything more shallow than that. You can overload it with snow depending on the snow year. We want the snow to go.
Will slide on a 412. You can go down to a 312 and it will slide, but it'll build up a lot of weight before it does. And but 412, it'll definitely slide. So yeah.
A question about that felt stuff we put over the waterproofing right before you buried it. It looked like a giant felt cloth. Somebody's wondering what's that called. It's actually made for putting under roads and driveways to keep the gravel from sinking. She's putting in a driveway and wants to maybe put it under her gravel.
So that filter cloth is really, really tough stuff. I always called it Marathi cloth, but it's a filter cloth that they put underneath road bases so that you don't mix, you know, the fine dirts into your gravel. So you do your rough cut, you lay that down. It usually comes in 14-foot rolls, and the rolls can range from, you know, 100 feet to, you know, 1,000-foot roll, depending on what you can pick up. But you know, because 14 is an average lane size, and so they roll that out, and then they put the gravel over the top of it. And I just went to a construction site and or a road building company and bought some you know, cutoffs that they had, and turned out that one big cutoff was enough to do the whole foundation. And like I say, it's super tough, and so the rocks can hit it, which, you know, will protect the rubber-based barrier that's on the foundation, you know, so it doesn't punch holes in it. And this stuff is, like I say, I mean, just super, super tough. And we got lucky and had some people around here that used that on their construction. And but to my knowledge, that's the only place you can get it is at, like, you know, somebody that actually is in road building. So,
like, I don't think you can go to Lowe's or
No,
Home Depot or something and buy it.
They have what they call garden fabric, weed barrier. This is way, way thicker than that. It's like, you know, the whole product is probably close to a 1/4 inch thick and super tough. You could grab it and pull on it with a machine, and I doubt you would tear it. So.
Then we had a question about sealing up the floor, which I think that was before the video where we showed doing that, but we did put a waterproofing layer on the plywood before putting the tarp over it. So if you did miss seeing that, we did do that to further help protect that surface till next summer.
I usually do that even if I'm not going to leave it for a year. I'll always, when I complete a floor package, even when I was building houses, I would do that, because during the construction period of time, you could have a real wet year, and it just helps, keep the plywood from coming apart, on the floor, through that period. So it's a good idea either way.
We also had several questions about having a dirt floor in the cellar. Will that not allow rodents to get in to our cellar?
The rodents around here, at least, they won't go down that far, and even if they would, they could never get through the rocks. You'd have to go down 7 feet and then under the footers, and getting rodents in there is not an issue. So, and they're certainly not coming through the walls. So I don't ever see that as an issue. Now, the floor itself, we elected to keep it gravel so that we had a little bit of submoisture that would come up through and create a little humidity, because we would like to have a higher humidity in the cellar. And if it got too high, we can manage that with venting. And we're going to play with this winter to see how much we would have to do, but that's the reason for it. If you seal it, then it just becomes an interior of a house, where our goal was to actually create a more realistic root cellar. So.
And we certainly do have rodents around here that tunnel on the ground, lots of voles and such, but they only ever get, about, I don't know, this far underground, not 6-7 feet, because I don't know if voles probably can go down 7 feet, but not when it's solid rock.
No.
So
good luck if they can go through that.
Somebody wanted to know if we have to get building permits and inspections while building on our property. This was, if you want to go back and watch I think there was like a 4 or 5 video series I did on when we were property shopping for buying this location, which took us quite a few years. Really wanted to get in on the action here. He likes to be between us. These were one of our top non-negotiables. We do have to do it. It's basically a building site, a building location permit. So the county confirms basically that you own the property, the place you plan to put a building is on your property, not on the neighbors or something like that. But other than that, there is no inspections. They simply quote the International Building Code and say, we recommend that you know how to build, or if you don't know how to build, hire someone who does, or hire an inspector and have a nice day. So there are not many places left in the country that you're actually free to build things, which is quite sad, but that was one of our non-negotiables, that we weren't gonna buy a place if that was not the case. Somebody asked, is the hole where the ladder is showing where the stairwell will be built? Yes. Right now the ladder's going down in the one direction. If you saw some of the last couple videos, the stairs will actually come into that from the opposite, from inside the house, not from the exterior wall. But yes, it's the same opening that will go down in.
But that scuttle hole will remain. It'll actually be inside the closet in the bedroom. So you will be able to drop something straight down there. And
or if we ever wanted to build a fancy dumbwaiter that came up and down, we could. I don't know that that's in the plans, but we could. No question out, did we put in a septic tank and leach field?
I'll let you answer that.
No, we're very happy with our composting toilet setup. It's more efficient, less expensive by far, and primarily provides us a useful fertilizer product instead of wasting it. So that's something we plan to continue the rest of our lives. Will we be able to use the cellar this winter, or will the entrance be all covered up like the rest of the floor?
We don't plan on using it. You could, but we don't plan on it. And I will, remove the snow on that one corner and pull back the tarp and go down there on occasion through the winter just to check on it. But no, we have no plans of actually using it this winter.
But we do plan to do some experimenting and measuring what the temperatures are and humidity levels and how much it does need vented and so on. So that hopefully by next year, we'll have a pretty good idea how it's working. Because anytime you're working with something natural, like what does this soil and earth at this spot want to do, left to its own devices.
And the goal is, of course, to have it to where you have no outside input, i.e., electricity or anything like that that requires power or mechanical devices of any kind. We want to see what will happen naturally, and we realize we're going to have to manage it by how much air we allow to go in versus what's going out, and vice versa. But we're in the process of fine tuning that, and I don't think Ariel's talked about it, but we have another root cellar that's actually in use right now. And at some point,
we'll show that as soon as I get a video done of putting the potatoes in it.
But we manage it the same way. So the goal is always to do it to where you don't have any outside power, or influence, just totally by nature. So.
But that just takes a little experience going through a full season to see what it's going to do. So hopefully by next season, we'll be putting things in there and we'll know what it's going to do, how much it needs vented, how much it needs closed so it doesn't get too cold, all that kind of thing. But that'll just take a year to figure out. So.
And it's something that's always a work in progress too, doing these kinds of things that are outside the norm, nothing we do is normal, but we experiment with it until we fine tune it, and I think everybody's situation is going to be unique in its own way, because of our elevation, our moisture, natural moisture, our temperatures. We could go on and on and on. We are unique for this area, and every area is going to be slightly different. So. You don't want to take just one person's idea. We're going to figure out how it works best for us, and we're going to fine tune it to where it works like a Swiss clock. But it'll take a little bit of time, and once we get that figured out, it'll work here, but it may not work anywhere else.
You'd have to do your own fine tuning because you have ground temperature, soil moisture levels, air humidity levels, outside temperatures. All that will probably be different than ours unless you're actually our next door neighbor.
Currently, our ground temperature right now is 53 degrees. That is the actual ground temperature. And we don't know where it's going to balance out yet because we've never actually physically tested it, but we are actively testing it now. And it is slowly dropping. We should be, according to the Wyoming data, it should be like at, 42?
42, I think. But we had such a blistering hot summer, and we had that ground open with the sun just baking into it for months and months. So I think it's going to take a while for that deeply collected heat to get out of there and actually settle out to whatever it's going to be.
And that won't happen until it gets really, really cold outside. And then eventually we should find what the actual ground temperature is, and it should be like that year after year, because the ground is no longer exposed, and so it should maintain that from here on in once we get it down there. But like Ariel said, we had an entire summer we had thermometers down there in that hole, and it was 130 degrees down there, and you can imagine that heat sink of all those stones absorbing all that heat out the sides and down in the ground. It raised the ground temperature, and it'll take a while before that balances out.
I figure it'll probably really be spring before we can be sure, okay, it's now settled out to what it really wants to be.
Well, when we started, it was 57 degrees. And it maintained that for a couple, 2 or 3 weeks at 57, and now it's down to 53, and as it drops, it doesn't tend to ever go back up. As it drops, it's finding its, happy medium. And if it goes into the 40s, it'll be ideal. It'll be a perfect refrigerator. Yeah.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
A bunch of people want to be clay when they grow up. That's not a question, that was a statement.
Yeah.
We have a question. Did you use 1 1/8 plywood for the floor or 1/2 inch? I found it really hard to find the 1 1/8 inch plywood, not OSB. What is the floor actually made out of?
The floor is, they call it U-lay. It's got a tongue and a groove, and they click together like a puzzle piece. Not quite that easy, but they do go together, and it's 3/4 inch. Well, that's the thickness it's supposed to be. Of course, they keep shrinking. Now it's like 23, 30 seconds or some bloody thing like that. But
Is what it actually measures.
It's thinner than 3/4, but where we're at 16 inches on center, 3/4 inch floor is more than adequate, and it makes a good subfloor and a good working floor to work on. And you could leave the finish on there and live with that floor if you wanted to. So yeah, the answer is it's a 3/4 inch floor. The 1.25 floor, they call that 5/4, and typically that's used in hay lofts and where you have real high loading on the floor, and we don't have any of that, so that would be a waste of money
for this particular application.
Mm-hmm.
We got a question out. Are those styrofoam Lego-like blocks used in other parts of the country, or is that unique to this kind of building environment?
No, they're used all over. They really came about because more and more people want to do things themselves, and the typical concrete form world is, Simon or Simpson or whatever forms. There's several different companies, but they're very expensive, they're heavy, and a homeowner can't do the job. So companies started making these foam blocks so that, your average homeowner, if you want to take the time to learn how to do it, it's not very hard. And you can clip them all together and make a foundation and pour it, and you don't need any professional help in doing so. And that's why they become popular, just because you don't need a contractor to do it. Now, a lot of people have contractors do the foam blocks. It's just because that's what they chose to have in their house. And there's advantages and disadvantages, but I would prefer just regular concrete forms because that's what I did all my life, was do those, and I like the product when it's done, but there is, you have to come back and put insulation on and everything else, and these, once you clip it all together and pour the concrete, you're insulated inside and out, and it's pretty well insulated foundation. So being so wide creates a few different challenges, in building. But overall, it's a good product, and no, it's not unique to here. They're used all over the country, probably every state, unless they've got some county or something that make them illegal. I don't know. And if they do, it's just being a moron, because there's absolutely nothing structurally wrong with using these blocks. If you do it right and you put your steel in properly and all that, there's absolutely no reason that you can't have a structurally sound product with them. So.
We have several questions about, do we have a name for our new house yet? Variations on Fineth, like Our Nest. Somebody suggested Our Roost. We haven't picked a name yet. I don't know. We'll come up with something. Those are all good suggestions.
I don't name things, but whatever.
We had quite a few questions on that. We have several questions on size. What size is this structure? It obviously looks much, much bigger than the tiny house, because it is bigger than the tiny house.
When it's complete, it'll be 1,024 square feet. So relatively small in, home building standards of what the average household is, or whatever. It's smaller than that. And
big compared to a tiny house, though.
Big compared to a tiny house, yeah. And it's more than enough space for us, and so fine.
on that topic, somebody said length and width. It's the house itself is basically a 32 by 32 square on the outside, and then the little mudroom, Arctic entry, whatever you want to call that, spot is another 6 foot by 8 foot little double doored room that'll come into it. But that's the overall exterior dimensions, and that's pretty well set in concrete now, so that's not going to change.
Nope, it is what it is. Yeah.
Speaking of things set in concrete, this wasn't a question on here, but since we're going to have a long rambly video here anyway, since we last showed people a approximate interior house plan that, like we said, was open to changing, we redesigned the whole interior of the house. Why did we do that?
Because, and it was my fault, I've got to admit to that right here and now. I looked at that and put my chair up there on the floor, and I didn't like my view. And I cautioned everybody the last time that we, had a sit down, that you really want to take the time to figure out what you're going to be looking at in the lifetime of living in your house. And I sat down in there, and it put too much emphasis to the south, a little bit to the south, and the potential. There's nothing there right now. It's just farm fields and cows and whatnot, but it could potentially be built on, and I would be devastated if that's all I had to look at was other properties. And
A neighbor's house wall. You'd rather not spend the rest of your life staring at someone else's house.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, absolutely.
Me
didn't
too.
want to be looking at somebody's house wall, and so I wanted it rotated a little bit more to the east, and so that took required moving some walls and rooms, and actually changed the whole thing. We had to
On the interior.
on the
Because
interior.
the exterior was at this point already literally set in concrete, so obviously
Yeah.
it wasn't moving, and we were fine with that.
Yeah.
We had
Well, sort of. You wanted to move the stairway,
it
but
did kind
yeah,
of. It
but-
would have.
that's not happening. So.
But we had a whole night. We were up till like 2 in the morning, like
Yeah.
Tetrising around. So like we've got this box now. If we put the bathroom here and we move this here, okay, the stairwell's here and it can't move. So this, oh nope, but then that won't fit. So then we re-Tetris again and re-Tetris again, and so now we've come up with a slight redesign of the interior, mostly to fix what faces where, that I think we like even better than our original for sure.
Oh, for sure, and it's forever. The view to the east is forever. Nobody could ever build, because it's a long enough piece of property that, and it slopes down and slopes off. So what we see, when this is complete, looking out toward the east, is going to be there forever. So
Even if someone did build in that direction eventually,
we wouldn't see
it
it.
would be far enough away.
Yeah.
We control the view because what we will look at now is mainly our orchard, the tiny house and garden, and the mountains, and
Yeah.
that's ours.
Yeah.
So, we're going to be in our home before the snow.
No.
So we kind of already answered that it has snowed. We have some other timeline questions. I think what we're approximately thinking is basically the house is going to sit, and we're going to work on some other little projects we have through the winter, and then get it framed up and dried in through next summer is the hope.
Speaking of which, we have a window issue.
Oh, let me finish this real quick and we'll go to the window issue. So I have it hopefully dried in, the exterior finish by next winter, and it probably would still not be moved in, but next winter, through the course of the winter, be able to work on finishing interior walls and stuff like that. So I don't think we're thinking of being moved in until spring, a year and a half from now, probably, right?
Well, that's always the plan, but I probably won't add too much to that, but Ariel has a tendency to move in long before things are done. So I'm just saying it.
Ariel is pretty committed to keeping all our stuff in our temporary
Yeah.
pile here in the shop
Yeah.
until it is fully done. So we're not trying to work and live in the same space.
Makes
because
it a
that's
lot
pain.
tougher for me to get it done. Yeah.
Windows. So windows are a big deal. If you live at sea level, you may not be aware of some of these issues, but even when I was growing up, which wasn't that long ago, windows were basically a sheet of glass in some kind of a frame, and they were there, and they were a window until someone threw a baseball through it or something and broke it, and then you replaced the sheet of glass. More modern windows are all generally made with a double, at least sometimes a triple or more pane, where you have two separate sheets of glass with usually a very skinny gap between them. They're often filled with argon or some kind of gas that helps insulate them, because windows are the leakiest point of a building. If you have a well-insulated wall and then you just have a pane of glass at the window, it's not very insulated. So that's to try to gain insulation. Then there's all kinds of coatings that are put on them to block UV rays and such. So this is a big deal to me for several reasons. I learned this when I moved into the tiny house, which has very high-end, very expensive windows in it, and a lot of windows. If you've ever seen in there in that little space, I think I have 14 windows. So it's very bright. I actually thought I could grow plants, not just house plants, but like start my own seedlings for the garden and stuff. There's a lot of windows. It's really bright. And I very quickly learned that with all those UV blocking coatings and such, which are generally done to help keep your couch or your carpet from fading, that kind of thing, plants do not grow without that light. So even with all the light that to your human eyes looks like there is in that tiny house, because it is very bright, the only plants that will grow in there are ones that require very, very little light, like some vines and stuff that normally grow, I don't know, under all the big trees in a jungle or something like that. You certainly cannot start a cabbage or an onion in there. It doesn't get nearly enough of all the full spectrum rays of light it needs. So that was something I was unaware of. I have other friends now who have huge floor-to-ceiling windows on a south-facing wall in their house, and learned the same thing when they replaced them with nice new modern glass, that now all their plants inside died. There's this great big wall of bright light, and not enough of the actual sun spectrum comes through to grow things. So I want to be able to grow things in our house. They're also, if you learn more about human health, it's important for your body to get the full spectrum of light as well. But a bigger issue than that even is that they tend to seal these two panes of glass up so that they don't leak and such. And I think it is worse at our elevation than at sea level.
Yep.
But I think the nationwide average is
7 years.
Is that those pop. The seals pop at about 7 years. It's often within a year or two at our elevation. And then when they pop, it's no longer sealed. Moisture eventually from some wet day or something, some humidity will get in there, will fog up in between the panes of glass, and they're no longer sealed, so the moisture gets in there, but you also can't open them, so you can't clean it. So eventually you can't see out your window because you're looking through this misty, foggy layer. And in some of the last big houses you took care of, they replaced windows. I mean, they just
Every year.
Rotation every single
Every year, yeah. And we don't want to be in that, situation where, if I put a window in, I want that window to be there as long as, I'm around, unless it gets broke. But to put in a window and spend that kind of money to put in a window and then have a lifespan of the window of maybe 7 years, in most cases, the more recent windows I've done, they've lasted 2 to 3 years before the seal broke, and they were fogging up in between the glass. And
a lot of the companies know it's an issue at this elevation, because many of the warranties, from what I've been looking at different window companies, they won't warranty their windows at all if you're over a certain number of feet in elevation. Our yard here is about 6,300 feet above sea level, so we're fairly high. So it's a known issue. I don't like the idea of the work and labor to replace them regularly, the cost, or the idea of just buying things to plan to use for a few years, throw them away and get a whole new thing. My favorite window style I've ever seen that solves the insulation issue and the still being able to see through your window issue is, I don't know if any of you subscribers also follow a young couple in Sweden. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of their channel name, but it's something like Talasbjörn, which is I believe a Swedish word. They have a little homestead. I love following their stuff because they have a very similar climate and a lot of very similar activities to ours. So it's just fun to see somebody like, a lot different area that's living such a similar life to ours. But they're also building a house right now, and they have windows that are what I would like. They are two separate, fully functioning windows. So if you have your window frame here, it goes in like this, And the inner window can, crank open this way, and the outer one can crank open that way. And when they're closed, it looks like there's a gap about this wide of just dead air space in there, but it's not sealed. You can open either side of it or both. And so if you get moisture in there, it fogs up, you can simply crank your window open and wipe it off. It's not impossible to get to. But when they're both closed, you get a big dead air space, which gives you some insulation. Even theirs in Sweden were custom built and took them some number of years to get. But I can't find anyone in this country manufacturing such a thing. So if any of you know...
And also, I really can't frame the house without having this resolved, and I put Ariel on it because it's more her, issue. Other than, I don't want to have to replace the windows, and that is a big issue. But as far as the light, I'm indifferent on that. But it would be nice to be able to get this resolved before spring, so we at least know what size openings I've got a rough frame into the walls. Otherwise, I'm going to have to frame them in place. If I want to continue, building the structure, I'm going to have to just frame through them and then come back in and cut windows and put headers in. And if you've done any building, that's not exactly a fun job to do that, but it can be done. And so that's kind of where I'm at with this, and so this is actually like putting out an appeal to people out there watching. Maybe somebody knows somebody that actually makes a window that fits our criterias, and right now we haven't been able to find it. But I know there is, because there is in Sweden, but we're not in Sweden, so
yeah. So basically, what I'd like ideally is 2 separate windows that each operate actually, and you can open and close them so you can get in between them. But when they are closed, they have a space in between them, but where each window is a single pane of glass, not double paned, not with a seal that can pop, not coated with some kind of low E coating that blocks the full spectrum sun rays, just 2 pieces of glass in 2 separate window frames that freely both operate. And if you know of anyone who builds such a thing, your neighbor, a little business in your town, some company you heard of, we would love to hear it.
Not all that long ago, a few years, several years back, there was a company that, and I can't remember the name of the window company, but they made a window that, this is not a new idea. But they had the main glass on the inside, and then on the outside it was a separate piece of glass that was clipped in there that you could take it out, clean both surfaces, and put it back together, and then you were accomplishing the thermal break, with the 2 pieces of glass. So that would be another option. Having them crank open on both sides is really cool, but I think it's also really expensive to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't have my heart set on that. If it just has a way that you can remove one of the panes easily and clean between them, because even these high-end expensive homes with high-end, like multiple $1,000 per window windows, they're fogging on the inside when that seal pops till you're looking at through what you might buy as like a privacy glass for a bathroom or something, where it's letting some light in, but you can't see out your window, which is not our goal for all our windows in our house.
Yeah, and not having to, we try to recycle, reuse, there is no reason at all for windows to only have a 7-year lifespan. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard of, especially in this day and age, because I can promise you years ago that was not the case. You put a window in, had that window till the day you died. But they were all hand glazed in there, and then they came up with this, argon gas, and boy, they had failures with those from the start, with tubes that you had to crimp when the glass got to your house or your location, none of them ever worked. And but just finding glass that is not low E glass, we're finding is difficult. You can't just say, I want clear glass. It's like nobody knows how to make a piece of glass that doesn't have all this,
Literally,
Well,
all the research I can find is you should spend more on your windows to have all the low E coatings so it blocks most of the full spectrum light. And because this is energy saving and efficient and green and friendly, and oh, well, then you want to go plants, well, just buy a grow light and plug it in. I'm like, well, this is pretty silly and does not actually seem efficient, cost effective, or anything else. Oh, let's block all the real sun that a plant would need. So then just buy a fake light bulb and plug it in and buy the power to run it. And, you know, I would very much like to avoid that.
But anyway, that's it, I think.
Yeah, if you have any window tips or places to buy the kind of thing we're describing, please comment and tell us. We would love to hear about it. Somebody has got this was just funny. Somebody who watches with automatic subtitling on said every time Clay runs a saw, her subtitles don't know what to do with the noise and it just reads applause, which made me laugh. So apparently you're getting applauded every time you saw. Let's see. Next question. Somebody asked, what do we do with all the rubbish we've dug up? Because I did show some of this place property was used as a trash dump before we had it. So we've got broken glass and bits of metal. Some of it we have reburied. There's one main area on the place that was there when we bought it that was used as a burn pit and garbage dump. And so it has a lot of stuff embedded deeply down in. So some of the things we found in other spots we've just added to that pile and are gradually burying it in. And we'll probably plant some trees on top of it. Tree roots can go down through, glass and metal and stuff and be fine. But it would be very difficult to ever filter that out. And then some of the large metal scraps we've pulled out and collected and eventually taken to metal recycling. The first year here, we took a metal pile that was, how many 100 pounds?
I think it was close to a ton. We took out close to a ton of steel.
So that's what we're doing with that stuff. I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we're not picking up glass shards around the place or not.
No. Every time it rains, more pops up.
Or when the chickens scratch. More questions that will we be in it by winter? No, we've already addressed that. So you're going to get to see, if you like following this process, you're going to see lots more videos for a long time before it's actually done. Clay has more different skills than anyone I've ever seen. Is he a Wyoming native? Almost.
Almost, but
I've
that's interesting because it's always been kind of a pet peeve of mine, but I've spent most of my life here, and actually I've lived here probably longer than anybody that's a native, but...
I said your parents moved here when you were a little boy, but you weren't born in Wyoming.
No, I was not born in Wyoming, so that doesn't make me a native, and, but I've been here longer than most people, simply because most people that are natives, supposedly, they have left and they'll go for the winter and come back in the summers, and they're half-timers. But anyway, no.
Several comments on working by headlamp, which Clay's done a lot of this year. Even with our long daylight hour summer days, you were working till well after dark, and
mostly because that was when it was the coolest. Yeah.
Well, you worked right through the heat of the day most of the time too.
Yeah.
But headlamps, I think Clay would vouch for, he's got a rotation of like 4 of them, and we can always keep recharging them, but you use them a lot.
Yep. You can really get a lot done with a headlamp on. Because they're right, it's always right at your work, whatever you're doing. You don't need to see around, anything else around you. You're only focusing on what your actual project is, so.
And it leaves your hands free because you're not trying to hold a flashlight or something. Let's see if we have any other actual construction-related questions. I'm sure probably a bunch of people are gone at this point. This video has gotten very, very good and long. But we did have a lot of questions, and I was hoping to get to doing this question and answer video much earlier. On a nice snowy cold day, which usually we're getting like 6 weeks ago now, but we're getting it now finally. So, do we have any other stuff to answer about construction questions?
Nope, just add our, giving all the people that are watching this their homework, to
Go find us the windows
go
we
find
want.
us the windows that are the perfect window and that we're going to love forever, and low maintenance and and practical, real windows. Our goal has always been to build something that once it's done, there should be very little input for many, many years or generations to come, without just real little, touch-ups here and there every once in a while, but for the main structure to be user-friendly and maintenance-free. So.
Another question I did get was, fireproof. We're not to the exterior of the house, other than the exterior of the cellar, but has made headlines around some of the country right now. There are several gigantic fires, 70, 80, I don't know, they might be more than that since I last looked at the most recent update. 80,000 acres on fire in several individual fires. None of them are directly threatening our property at the moment, which is wonderful. We have had a lot of smoke here from them. And so somebody was asking out, since we are in an area that is prone to wildfires, what are we going to do about the exterior of our house being resistant to that?
Well, I can tell you this for certain. No fire is going to affect the house, period. It's going to have a metal roof, number one. It's going to have concrete siding on it, number two. There'll basically be nothing combustible from the outside, even if there was a fire, but also we take precautions throughout the year to make sure there is nothing dead for a great distance around us. We keep it all knocked down. So we do our own fire prevention as well, but even flying embers or anything like that, there's nothing on the property that could catch fire from that. So.
Yeah, for us to burn the house down, we'd have to do it from the inside.
Yeah.
With concrete board siding, which is the plan, and a metal roof, embers won't get anything. But like you said, we try to make sure right up against every building is either watered, or like around the shop building is just clean gravel without a bunch of brush and dead dry weeds and flammable things like that accumulating. If they do grow, we make sure they get mowed or weed whacked off or something like that, because like this summer especially, we got, until this rain and snow the last couple days, I think we had a 1/4 inch of moisture in the preceding 2.5 months. The native woods here was drier than kiln dried lumber, which is why the fires are burning hot and huge. So that's in our very dry area, that's definitely something to pay attention to for sure.
Yeah, but you have to stay on top of it too. You can't just expect it to somebody else to take care of the problem. You gotta do your fair share.
Yeah, we try to constantly maintain that in case of fire danger.
And this property has burned before. There's evidence of it. A lot of things burning on here before.
Before we purchased it.
Mm-hmm. But we have mitigated all that. So.
Yeah, and I think pretty much all the other questions I have are duplicates or very close to that of ones that we have already answered. So if I entirely missed a question in here that you asked, or you had one that never got asked, go ahead and comment down below and tell us what it is. And when we have another cold, snowy day, we'll sit in here. We've got the wood stove going over there right out of sight, and it's cozy in here.
Yeah.
We'll do another question and answer video. But thanks for watching, and if you're still here after this very lengthy Q&A session, we very much appreciate you, and hopefully you're finding it interesting. Like Clay said, I know there's more than one way to build things, and it's always fun when I hear you and some of our friends who live in different parts of the country discuss the way things are done differently, because some people don't have snow loads, some people have way more moisture. There's the right way to do something here isn't the right way in Tennessee. We have a good friend who lives there who's a builder, and so on. But it's yeah, hopefully you're finding the process interesting, even if it's not exactly what you duplicate in your area, or maybe you're not ever building anything at all, but it'll be ongoing for quite a while, though we're pretty close to having a wrap up on the construction videos until next spring.
Yep. But thank you, everybody, and I will try to answer questions as they come along if Ariel can get me captured long enough to do it. This is a pretty good capture for her right now, so.
It is. He didn't really want to sit down to do this, so also thanks to Clay for being willing to sit in front of the camera and answer questions.
Okay.
Adios. Have a great time. See you in the next video.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. It means a lot, and I hope you learned something along the way.
If you know somebody else who would enjoy this as well, share it with them.